Hello, my name is E-Soup, or Ezra, or Specific Soup, or whatever you want to call me. And today we are continuing Volume 7 of Ballad of Sword and Wine. Which I keep reminding myself is the second to last volume, and we're so close to the end. And last stream was a banger, so I'm just sort of like, what could possibly happen today? And if I remember correctly, we ended on a bit of a cliffhanger with Jan Haru doing sketchy things involving the doctor possibly dying in a carriage accident that he might have made happen somehow. Yes, Blue, you said I'm terrified about us reaching whatever's prepared for us as a story climax. Same here. Also, hi, Sakine, hi, Lanjade, hi, Blue. Yes, I'm scared of just basically anything that could happen, really. Hold on, I need to get the thing pulled up that tells me what chapters we're reading today. That's important. Today we are reading chapters 227 to 231. Last time we had long chapters, today we have, like, short chapters. Yeah. I've been waiting to find out what happens next, but like I said, I'm also scared. And if this doctor that they'd been looking for dies, then I'm like, where are we gonna find the super powerful, amazing doctor that we need for, you know, at this point, both Shenzachuan and Yao and Yu. So I'm very worried about that. Yeah. I don't know how everybody else is feeling. Well, besides Blue. But if you're like me, you might also be worried. Concerned. I keep looking at the front cover. And I keep being like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. And also so concerning. Also, my bookmark that I've been using for the series does seem to, like, particularly go with this cover. See the green and then this, yeah. It goes very well. I'm very satisfied with that. But I'm gonna stop putting it off, and I'm just gonna start reading. We are on page 67 for chapter 227. Which is called Child Prodigy. Oh yeah, we were talking last time about who the child prodigy, like, who that's referring to. I wonder. By the time the men we sent to receive them reached Chazhou's borders, the venerable master's carriage had already arrived from Hezhou. The Hezhou yeoman was pursuing them, so they rode straight through, without daring to stop on the way. The carriage overturned on the old road outside the city of Chazhou and plunged into a stream. The guard hesitated. It shattered on impact. There were no survivors. The guards in the courtyard fell as silent as cicadas in winter. The only sounds the murmur of running water. The bamboo tube in the pond tapped against the rock, and fresh water from the pond washed over the stone surface, turning the moss so dark it looked black. Fei Sheng's heart sank as he looked at Shenzachuan. Shenzachuan's expression was unexpectedly calm. After standing in the covered walkway a moment, he asked, why was the Hezhou yeoman pursuing the venerable master's carriage? While passing through the border checks, they claimed to be relatives of the Yan clan, the guard reported. They didn't know Chudu had issued an imperial edict. The entire prefecture of Hezhou is on the hunt for Yan Haru. The moment the local government heard they were related to the Yan clan, they assumed they were absconding to flee punishment. Great. It was too much of a coincidence, as if the heavens themselves were preventing the venerable master from reaching Zhongbo. Yeah. Fei Sheng didn't believe in this kind of coincidence, and Chao Tianya even less so. The men they dispatched to receive the carriage were the best of the best. If they said the carriage overturned, Then it must have been a real accident with no tampering, or at least, no evidence. Interesting. Shen Zichuan had guessed Master Yi Deng had met an untimely end well before the guard finished his report. Anything less, and the embroidered uniform guard could have resolved it themselves instead of bringing the matter to him. If Yan Haru considered Master Yi Deng his trump card, he had disposed of it far too urgently this time. So much so that Shen Zichuan found it hard to believe he was ever going to hand the venerable master over in the first place. Why would Yan Haru dare to do this? Yes, why would he dare? Like, he obviously thinks that he'll be okay, even though he's done this, that he's, like, safe somehow. Like, is there someone... I'm trying to think. There's someone, like, backing him or protecting him. I'm like, do we know something about that already, or is it totally a mystery to us? I can't remember right now, but it seems like he's feeling very confident that, like, he's gonna be okay. Because I can't imagine that he would think that Shen Zichuan would not, like, figure out that he did something. Shen Zichuan held up his folding fan to stop Chao Tianya from speaking. Glancing at the side hall where Yan Haru sat waiting, he said, "It's late. Go get ready." With a solemn nod, Chao Tianya retreated. By the time Shen Zichuan lifted the hanging screen and entered, Yao Wenyu had left. Yan Haru was bouncing his leg absently as he fiddled with his golden abacus. He had no proficiency in mental arithmetic, but he was extraordinarily good at calculations with the abacus. As long as the beads were clacking away noisily between his fingers, he'd never confuse the numbers in his mind. What happened to the venerable Master Yi Deng? Yan Haru flicked the last bead. As Shen Zichuan sat down, he leaned across the table and added, "I heard some commotion." No servants were waiting in attendance in this room, so Shen Zichuan poured a cup of hot tea for himself. Through the willowy spirals of steam redolent with the fragrance of tea leaves, he replied simply, "An accident." Yan Haru exclaimed in surprise, "Heavens! Is the venerable master all right? I reminded them over and over to be careful. I even asked my best men from home to escort him." Rather than drink the tea, Shen Zichuan pulled over the empty porcelain saucer and emptied the tea into it as if he was rinsing the cup. With a gentle shake of his head, he said, "They said the carriage plunged into a stream in its frantic escape from the Hezhou Yemen's pursuers. All the passengers died on the spot. A terrible pity. I was counting on the venerable master to extend my life this year." Yan Haru's expression underwent a slight shift. The venerable master is gone? Shen Zichuan gripped the empty cup and looked up at Yan Haru. His gaze was steady. The venerable master is gone. Yan Haru's expression had been calm, without the slightest ripple, but under Shen Zichuan's gaze, uncertainty stole over his face. Tentatively, he said, "I already gave him up to you." Shen Zichuan loosened his grip, and the cup fell to the table, where it rolled several times before bumping against the edge of Yan Haru's golden abacus. The lanterns in this room were all in the back, partially obstructed by the hanging bamboo blinds. The table was full of shadows. Shen Zichuan didn't speak for a long time, merely scrutinizing Yan Haru from behind his fan. He was unable to find the slightest trace of concealment on that face. On this point alone, Yan Haru was better at this game than Shi Hongxuan. Finally, Shen Zichuan laughed. He lowered his fan and set it on the table. "A truly unexpected misfortune. How can I blame you for it?" He didn't seem angry. Yan Haru couldn't figure out what the governor was thinking. But he had come to have some understanding of Shen Zichuan over these past 6 months, and he knew this was not the moment to rush or get anxious. Shen Zichuan excelled at mind games. The moment Yan Haru dropped his guard, the prefectural governor might turn hostile. "Your lordship is broad-minded, as expected of a ruler in turbulent times," Yan Haru said. I've seen my share of so-called great heroes, but none come close to your lordship. Whatever shall we do now that the venerable master is no more? I can see Mr. Yuanzhuo's health is worsening by the day. He needs urgent treatment. Physicians are common, but miraculous healers are rare indeed. Now that I think of it, where did you find Master Yidong in the first place? Shen Zichuan asked with interest. Hezhou, of course. I have a thought. What if that Master Yidong was not actually the real Master Yidong? I don't know why, but what if somebody was posing as him? Or what if he's, like, in hiding under a secret identity or something like that, and Yanharu was wrong about who it was? Or what if he, like, took someone to pretend to be him and he's literally bluffing about it being the doctor? Like, what if Yanharu is, like, knows that it's not him? I don't know. Anything is possible. But maybe I'm just saying that because I'm trying to be hopeful that the real doctor is still around somewhere. Hezhou, of course. Yanharu's expression relaxed. Perhaps your lordship doesn't know. Hezhou was the venerable master's home before he became a monk. When I heard Arya was looking for him, I sent a few men to keep an eye on his former abode. As luck would have it, he went back for a visit. What a pity I was too late. Had I sent for him a few days earlier, the venerable master might have been in Duanzhou by now. It wasn't meant to be, Shen Zichuan said. It can't be helped. But I do know a few retired imperial physicians in Jueshi, all masters of their art. They used to treat the Guangcheng emperor. Yanharu righted the fallen cup. Their reputations are no less prestigious than Master Yidong's. They're quite renowned in the 13 cities. Many high-ranking officials and noblemen knock on their doors for a consultation. If your lordship wishes to meet them, I'll bring them with me next time I come back. Yes? Unexpectedly, Shen Zichuan picked up the teapot and poured for Yanharu. They must cost a fortune, huh? If a mere 50,000 taels of silver can improve your lordship's health, then it's no trouble at all. Seeing that the tea was about to overflow, Yanharu lifted a hand to stop him. It makes me happy to spend money for your lordship. A gust of night breeze slid around some corner, sending ripples across the surface of the tea. Hand still outstretched, Yanharu lowered his voice. I heard the second young master of the Shi clan had set a trap for your lordship in Chudu, but ended up killing himself right before your eyes. Tisk tisk. Must have been a mess with his blood spilled all over the ground. How tragic. Shen Zichuan didn't set down the teapot. With a smile, he said, One who does many wrongs is doomed to bring about his own downfall. I couldn't have stopped him even if I wanted to. But as I see it, Yanharu said, your lordship is no man of honor either. He held the word until he dissolved into giggles. I'm on familiar terms with the embroidered uniform guard in your manor already, your lordship. So why are they waiting for me outside? The candle flames in the room jumped and flickered. All was quiet in the courtyard. Shen Zichuan's guards seemed to have disappeared. Yanharu drew his hand back. Undaunted, he continued, I never learned any martial arts, not even any pretty moves for show. Why make such a fuss if your lordship wants to kill me? Draw avalanche and gut me like a fish. He smacked his thigh lightly and said as though he had just remembered, Oh, I forgot. Your lordship can't hold a blade anymore. No wonder Arya is searching every corner of the land for Yidong. He must be absolutely sick with worry. This little shit. Fei Sheng cursed silently where he crouched on the rooftop. This little shit indeed. Oh my god. How could I bear to kill you? Shen Zichuan set down the teapot. Qidong is still counting on you to supply their military provisions in the 4th month, and you're shouldering the expenses for the Liuzhou port too. Without you, Who will handle this business on my behalf? See, I figured your lordship couldn't do it. Yan Haru tapped the handle of his chair with his fingers. His leg jiggled. But hey, it can't be helped. You were ripping me off so bad a while back, but now half your assets are staked on my ventures. Let me say a word in all honesty, okay? I can't bear to fall out with you either. Where else would I find such a good-looking and intelligent master like your lordship? I swear this whole saga with Yidong is a total surprise to me. If your lordship agrees, I'll give Master Yuanzhuo 20,000 taels of silver as an apology. Would that do? Happiness is what matters most. Otherwise, life isn't worth living. Ooh, just as it seemed the atmosphere in the room would thaw, Shen Zichuan spoke. Master Yidong died a long time ago, didn't he? Yan Haru looked at Shen Zichuan with a smile still plastered on his face. That can't be. If he were still alive, you would never have given him up so easily. Shen Zichuan ran a finger along the edge of his fan and said contemplatively, what did the 8 cities' granaries matter? Even if I was put out over it, I wouldn't kill you. But it's hard to say when it comes to Master Yidong. Shen Zichuan's expressive eyes were dark as ink as he regarded Yan Haru. Sa'an expended so much effort searching for the Venerable Master. If he'd tracked him down only to find he died on your watch, even the Jade Emperor in heaven couldn't save you. You had to rid yourself of this lit fuse as soon as possible. Yan Haru had come to apologize and admit fault over the matter of the 8 cities' granaries. Chudu's probing had led them to the Pan clan's city of Danzheng, and in that investigation, Shui Yanqing had briefly emerged as the victor. Yan Haru must have long known he would be wanted by the imperial court. He merely had to feign handing over Master Yidong and give the Hezhou Yamen an opportunity to hunt down his carriage. That way, the accident that led to the Venerable Master's demise would appear entirely natural. This was a card Yan Haru had been reluctant to play, but he was truly out of options. He really had found Master Yidong in Hezhou, and had kept him imprisoned in his manor since the beginning of the year. But he hadn't expected the man to die in his charge. Oh my god. So he had him, was trying to keep him alive, and this man died. Are you joking right now? The leverage he'd planned to use to threaten Shen Zichuan had become a fatal liability. Once Xiao Qie sniffed out the Venerable Master's whereabouts, Yan Haru wouldn't be given any opportunity to explain himself. Only by facing Shen Zichuan did he stand a chance of striking a deal that could guarantee his survival. You are so smart. Yan Haru had never been stingy with praise. He clutched his abacus tighter and continued. But if your lordship is still willing to sit here and talk, you must also be willing to show mercy. I've been doing some calculations. The 6 prefectures of Zhongbo can't afford to supply a year's worth of military provisions to both the northern and southern battlefields. Not to mention, your lordship wishes to restore the people of Zhongbo's livelihoods. I'm not like Shi Hongxuan. Every step of the way, you can't do without me. You are indeed unlike Shi Hongxuan. Why compare yourself to him? Shen Zichuan found Yan Haru fascinating. You are extravagant in your dealings, and you go about decked in gold and silver. Your robes are embroidered with copper coins and ingots, and you have a golden abacus around your neck. You want the whole world to know you love money. But is money really what you love? Oh. Also, hello, Marty. Wait, that's interesting. Right, he is really so obvious and ostentatious about it that maybe he's using it to cover up something else? Shi Hongxuan had also been an ostentatious man who loved to flaunt his wealth, but never to the same extent. Compared to the gauche Yan Haru, Shi Hongxuan had possessed a nobleman's refinement. If one considered the amount of silver stockpiled in the Shi clan's treasuries versus the Yan clan's sparser vaults, Shi Hongshuan might even have been considered a dutiful and frugal son. Yan Heru was just the opposite. All his business transactions required a hefty upfront investment. Rather than a desire for wealth itself, it might be more apt to say he was obsessed with the business of making money. Okay. He's in it for the game, I guess. The exorbitant profits from the Chajo grain trade had propelled the Yan clan into a meteoric rise. Yan Heru had followed his success there with the expansion of the small trade market in Dunzhou, secretly working with the noble clans to resell official goods. The wealth he had accrued couldn't be spent in 3 lifetimes, yet that had never stopped him from trying. Throwing his lot in with Shen Zichuan had been an excellent opportunity for him to wash his hands of his less savory dealings. His ventures in the past had all been clandestine transactions made under the table. To scrub himself clean, he needed only behave himself and supply provisions and salaries to the northern and southern battlefields, on top of paying his respects to the prefectural governor from time to time. Once the dust of war settled and Shen Zichuan sat at the top, no one would be able to lay a finger on him, if only on account of the service he'd done in supplying military grain. He would seamlessly evolve into an honored official with incomparable merits to his name. But this was not what Yan Heru wanted. The very real recalcitrance in his nature stemmed from the same boldness that led him to propose ideas like building a new port. It wasn't that this young man was not smart. Okay, he's the yeah, okay. The reputation that preceded him was also the truth. He was a child prodigy. In fact, he was too smart, too practiced at exploiting every trick in the book. Had he not played the 8 great clans for fools too? Even now, they were trailing after him to pick up the coins he dropped. It didn't matter if those he dealt with were powerful ministers, or lords with lofty ambitions. He feared no one. Cradling his golden abacus, Yan Heru curled up in his chair and laughed aloud, his dimples deep. When he was done, he sighed. "Your lordship, is your heart really set on fighting your way to the top? Why not join me in business? Then I won't be so lonely anymore." Shen Zichuan sighed, too. "I was born at the wrong time." I want to know what he means by that. "So was I," Yan Heru said, cocking his head. "If only I'd been born 20 years earlier, there'd have been no room for Shi Hongshuan. That fatso was so stupid he wasted the best cards the Shi clan ever had." He raised his chin arrogantly. "See how the noble clans keep changing one emperor for another? When it was my turn, I'd want to swap a few for fun, too." Shen Zichuan still hadn't made any move to kill him. Yan Heru took a sip of tea to moisten his throat and continued. "Personally, I admire your lordship so much I'd prostrate at your feet. But somehow there's always a little difference of opinion between us. Have I told you about my mother? She was a fisherman's daughter from Huzhou, who grew up never having enough to eat. Yet she still had to rear her good-for-nothing brothers for her parents. Well, she got fed up with the abuse at home. One day she hit the ceiling. She jumped into the river and ran away from home. Disguised as a man, she crewed a boat for over 10 years, before going on to build a sprawling tea business in Huzhou with her sworn brothers. None of them had any family, so after some discussion, they decided to all take the surname Yan. How nice, right? As long as you've got money, you could do whatever your heart desires." He laughed again. "While established men took concubines, my mother went around picking husbands. She loved all the good-looking men in Huzhou, but my father was the most handsome of all. My mother died young, so my father became Master Yan. He was a businessman too, but he was timid, afraid of everything. Hell, he didn't even raise his head when he met the Shi clan's shopkeeper." Yan Heru had been well educated in the classics of the sages, but all their talk of benevolence, righteousness, morals, and virtues was mere rhetoric, It had nothing to do with him. Those who spoke of benevolence and righteousness, didn't they all die young? As time went on, he became more and more convinced of one thing. It didn't matter how long he lived, as long as he lived to his heart's content. He appeared vulnerable and scared of everyone. Level a sword at him, and he would shiver in fear. Yet he took risks those armed with real blades would never dream of taking. What kind of fortune was there to be made in Zhongbo? Yanharu knew all too well. He'd seen homeless migrants strewn over the lands when his carriage passed through the 6 prefectures. Pitiful creatures. But what did they have to do with him? He was merely having his fun while he could in this harsh world. If a peasant in Zhongbo starved to death, that couldn't be pinned on him. There were plenty in line before him who carried more blame. Where was his fault in all this? Oof. Oh boy. Yanharu leaned over the table. How am I to blame here? The fall of Zhongbo had nothing to do with me, and that was Shen Wei's fault. As for reselling grain, well, if I didn't do it, others would have. Rather than letting those tales be wasted on other people, I thought I might as well use the money to build a trade market. Money has to circulate, you see. What's the point of burying it in shut-up coffers like the Shi clan did? Shen Zichuan had wanted to eliminate Yanharu, so Yanharu had hidden Master Yidong away. What was wrong with that? It just so happened that the Venerable Master didn't survive. It wasn't as if he'd killed him. The Venerable Master was an old man. He would have died soon even if I didn't take him in. His time was up. He might have even died in the middle of nowhere, instead of comfortable at home, Yanharu said. Yanharu was too young. He was, in certain aspects, just as naive as he looked. It wasn't that he'd had no one to teach him, but no one who taught him had ever been his intellectual match. Cai Yu, whom he'd called Pa, had once been a righteous bandit who gave generously to the old and weak, women and children, in Chaozhou in his earlier years. But in the end, that man had still entered into despicable deals with Yanharu. All men like to preach about morality and righteousness, but that's just talk, no? Yanharu jumped down from the chair, still hugging his abacus. Everything in this world is driven by personal interests. Money exists to be spent. Spend it, and you can have everything. It's true I don't care about hoarding wealth because I can earn much, much more. There's no business I can't turn a profit on. It had gone very quiet in the room. Too quiet, Yanharu thought. He deliberated a moment and continued. As for what happened to Master Yidong, if your lordship takes it to heart, then there's nothing I can say. I made a bad move. I admit it. So, of course, I'm willing to make amends. If there's any medicinal herbs you need, you just let me know. And I'll still deliver Qidong's military provisions this year. Let's turn the page on this business. Shen Zichuan pinned him with his gaze. You should go. Yanharu remained fixed in place. Attempting to explain himself further, he added, The construction of the port of Liuzhou is at a critical juncture. Your lordship, I'll come call on you again the day after tomorrow to show you the plans. Still, Shen Zichuan was silent. I'm half wondering if he really kills Yanharu, what he is going to do about the deals that they had. Like, the grain delivery and all that stuff. Like, who is he going to get to take care of it? And whose help is he going to get to, like, do this, like, build this harbor and stuff? But then I'm like, it's Shen Zichuan. If he kills him, he's already, like, 5 steps ahead. He has that figured out already. So, I gotta trust in him. I gotta trust the process. Still, Shen Zichuan was silent. The candle flame had burned low, leaving the room dark and gloomy. Suddenly, Yanharu was afraid. It was different from any fear he had felt in the past. A slow, icy terror that seeped into his bones. He knew the kind of man Shen Zichuan was. Shen Zichuan wouldn't kill him, because an intelligent man wouldn't do such a thing. Of that he was absolutely certain. Yanharu took a few steps back. When he reached the door, he flashed a smile at Shen Zichuan and turned to lift the hanging screen and step out. A maidservant waited under the eaves with a lantern. Yanharu looked at that white lantern, as pale and unadorned as for a funeral procession, and his hair stood on end. The candle in the room had gone out. It was so quiet in the courtyard that not a sound could be heard. Yanharu didn't let the maidservant see him out. He grabbed the lantern from her and hustled down the veranda alone. He walked faster and faster until he broke into a frantic run, as if something was stalking him in the shadows. Gasping for breath, he raced ahead with everything he had. At this moment, he had to admit he was still afraid of death. I've got the silver for Qidong. The soft thump of feet landed on the ground behind him. He looked back in a panic and saw nothing. He sobbed like a child who had broken a vase, aggrieved to be facing punishment for such an inconsequential mistake. Shen Zichuan! Shen Zichuan sat in his chair and poured Yanharu's unfinished tea onto the ground, just as he'd done for Shi Hongxuan when he died. The spent tea leaves lay on the rug, where they dried up in no time. 2 clever brats abounded in this world, but not every adversary was willing to tolerate them. Okay, now I need to know, like, who took him out? Like, what happened? We have confirmation he's been killed? He just... That's the end of the chapter. Blue, I feel like you'll be happy because Shen Zichuan agrees with you that he's a brat. An apparently dead brat now. So that was intense. I was like, just like, someone's gonna step out, like someone's gonna do something. Like I thought we were gonna see something happen, but we got such an epic moment with him just like pouring the tea. Marty, you said I got scared of Shen Zichuan too. Exactly, like he's really scary, and just sometimes he shows it, and it's great. I love it. I love it, but I'm also a little scared. So, oh, I see. So, we're on page 81 for chapter 228, The Future. Oh, Blue, you said, yeah, but I liked him. I wanted someone to take him under their wing and help him learn some humanity. Yeah. In a less brutally horrible world than this one seems to be. I mean, like, maybe that could have happened. But yeah, he wasn't like the biggest bad. He wasn't the worst, and he was 18. But I mean, I think it just goes to show Shen Zichuan is the way he is. Like, in that he's pretty... I don't know if amoral is the right word. But yeah, he's pretty morally gray. He's doing things because they benefit him and his, like, maybe not just solely to benefit solely himself. Like, obviously he cares about Xiao Qie, but like, he's like, this is part of my goal. I'm not gonna step away from my goal just to consider, you know, not killing an 18-year-old or something like that. Just sort of, it's like that chapter was serving as a reminder to us that Shen Zichuan is scary. So, yeah. Oh yeah, you said, yeah, Shen Zichuan absolutely made the right decision in those circumstances. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm so curious now what he's gonna do without him, like how he's gonna take over the stuff that Yanharu was making happen. So yeah, page 81, chapter 228, A Future. Fei Sheng was meticulous in his duties. The guards washed all traces of blood from the walkway at top speed, and the entire affair was over in the time it took to finish a cup of tea. When Fei Sheng lifted the hanging screen to Shen Zichuan's room, he found the prefectural governor dozing off, his eyes fluttering shut. He lowered his voice. Master, it's been taken care of. Shen Zichuan seemed only half awake, his heavy-lidded eyes staring at the candle about to burn out. Sitting there, absorbed in the flame, he gave off an unapproachable aura. After a while, he asked, "Where is Gu Jin?" "He should arrive at Mount Luo tonight," Fei Sheng replied. Looking more awake, Shen Zichuan hummed a sound of acknowledgement. "Tell him to go back." Fei Sheng went down on one knee by the door and paused, careful to keep his tone neutral. "He'll have Arya's letter with him, Master. Mount Luo isn't far from Duanzhou. It won't take much time for him to deliver it." Shen Zichuan didn't respond. He was in a poor mood tonight. For valid reasons. Fei Sheng shut his mouth and wisely took his leave. In the time it took to burn through 2 sticks of incense, Chao Tianya arrived, pushing Yao and Yu in his wheelchair. The bamboo blinds rose and fell to admit him. Shen Zichuan glanced over. "Why haven't you retired yet, Yuanzhua? It's so late." Yao Wenyu set the book he was holding on his lap and rearranged his thin blanket. "Without Yanharu, the shops in Hezhou will be in disarray. Since your lordship is here thinking on this problem tonight, perhaps I can share my humble opinion." Yuanzhua had excelled for years at philosophical debates. His voice was like the murmuring of spring water, soothing and extremely pleasant to the ear. Shen Zichuan turned toward the door. "Light the lamps and bring tea." Are we? Yes, we're yeah, Yao and you and I are sharing a brain cell today. We're like, hey, what are we gonna do now that Yanharu is dead? Let's talk about it. A maidservant entered to remove the tea-stained rug and replace the lamps, brightening the room a little. Fei Sheng quietly instructed her to brew the tea strong, that it might keep the prefectural governor and his advisor alert. "Kill Yanharu, and the shops in Hezhou will be in disarray for a time. Let Yanharu live, and the commerce throughout the land will be in turmoil forever." Shen Zichuan didn't touch the teacup, but forced himself to stay focused. He was so certain I wouldn't take his life. If I acceded to his wishes, there would be no end to our troubles in the future. Shen Zichuan had no patience for obstinate brats. The moment Yanharu mentioned Master Yidong, Shen Zichuan had decided his fate. Shen Zichuan could be made a fool of, but he refused to be coerced. The truth was, Yanharu didn't understand Shen Zichuan or Xiao Qie at all. He hadn't the slightest clue which of the pair was the sheath and which the blade. Oh, right, because Shen Zichuan is the blade. He's not the stronger, more powerful one physically, but he's the blade because Xiao Qie is the sheath that, like, keeps him in check. And so, of course, yes, because Yanharu was talking about, like, I don't want to be around when this happens with Xiao Qie is there. Like, he was more afraid of Xiao Qie. Oopsie. Xiao Qie's urgency in seeking Master Yidong was driven by his recent and still raw loss. Shen Zichuan only had to think of how Xiao Qie would feel upon learning the news to resolve that Yanharu couldn't live a second longer. Wait, sorry. I feel like I read that with the wrong emphasis. Shen Zichuan only had to think of how Xiao Qie would feel upon learning the news to resolve that Yanharu couldn't live a second longer. Oh, okay. So, like, Shen Zichuan, even though, like, it's his life, it's his illness, but he's thinking about Xiao Qie and how Xiao Qie has tried so hard to find the doctor. And he's like, imagine how he would feel at learning this news and feeling bad for him and being like, okay, well, I have to kill him, obviously. Okay, I get it now. Yeah, he's going to be devastated. I don't know how we're going to deal with this one. Hi, Vase. Yeah. Yeah, Shen Zichuan is the one that you should always be afraid of. uh, Yao Wenyu waited for the maidservant to leave before speaking. Yan Haru came without an entourage this time. He left his aides behind in Hezhou, too, all to make your lordship think twice about making any move against him. It was just as Yan Haru had said. He was completely defenseless, with no martial arts knowledge, even for show. He dared to strut right into Shen Zichuan's own house and threaten him because he was assured of his success. He'd left all of his trusted aides behind. If he didn't return home as scheduled, the Yan clan would break off the bottommost rung of the trade route linking Huaizhou, Zizhou, and Chazhou, and refuse access to the merchants of Zhongbo. Shen Zichuan would be forced to go through Huaizhou and take a detour near Dicheng, then pass through the port of Yongyi to make it deep into Jueshi. This route not only took a toll in terms of time and energy, it also required dealing with various checkpoints along the way. Even the slightest slip-up could spell failure. Great, so we have that to deal with now. But like I said, Shen Zichuan is always like 5 steps ahead, so he maybe already has an idea of what to do about this. All merchants are driven by profit, Shen Zichuan said. Hi, Henry. Zhongbo is a crucial hub between Libei and Qidong. The Yan clan would be choking off not only my trade route, but that of the traveling merchants who have already invested in it. These people have had a taste of rare delicacies. If you tell them to return to eating wild forage, no matter how it tastes, it won't be enough to fill their stomachs. Shen Zichuan was unlike the bandits Yan Haru had dealt with in the past. He held legitimate power in the east, far greater than anything the likes of Cai Yu and Lei Jingzhe had ever wielded. He could negotiate border tariffs in both regions in the east. And he had a tight grip on Luoxia Pass, the trade market in Libei, and Dongzhou. If Yan Haru had tried to coerce him with trade alone, his success would have depended on whether or not Shen Zichuan was willing to play along. The armaments required by the Zhongbo garrison troops this year were significant in number, and it was impossible for Shen Zichuan to manufacture them himself. The copper mines were all in the west. The merchants who had been stealthily scalping imperial copper were stuck with last year's stock. By now, they were burning with anxiety and desperate to hop onto the ship that was Zhongbo. If the prefectural governor wanted to do business, he didn't need to go knocking on doors. The instant his lordship said the word, these people would trek thousands of miles to sell what they had on hand. It was well known that Liang Cuishan and Jiang Qingshan were conducting strict checks on all goods passing through their lands. As long as official copper that belonged to the imperial court remained in these merchants' warehouses, there was a chance they could be exposed. At that point, they were as good as dead. Shen Zichuan was the only person in the world who could buy up everything and get it off their hands. God, just like every now and then, I feel like I need a reminder of like how much power Shen Zichuan has amassed at this point. I know we're in book 7, so we're getting closer to the end, but it's still crazy to think about. Like, he has so much power now. As for Qidong's military provisions, Shen Zichuan wasn't worried about those either. When Shen Zichuan had taken over the Shi clan's shops, he had gone to considerable effort, relying on Shidan and Ge Qingqing. Because the Shi clan was a noble family and particular about bequeathing its inheritance only to those of their surname, he had spared the life of the eldest mistress, Shi. But this was not the case for the Yan clan, a group of sworn siblings who had established themselves through the tea trade. That's right, I want to know more about Yan Haru's mom because she sounded like a badass. Perhaps sentimental ties had bound them during Yan Haru's mother's generation, but by the time Yan Haru was rising, it was strictly the capable ones who ruled the family. With Yan Haru out of the picture, the brothers scrambling to take his place would all be willing to negotiate with the prefectural governor. Even if Shen Zichuan didn't say a word about the Qidong military provisions, he'd have people lining up to be his supplier. Yan Haru was impatient. It was important, but nowhere near as important as he'd thought himself to be. The port in Liuzhou was under the sole control of Yan Haru, Yao Wenyu said. We don't have all the details about its construction. However, Shi Dan is currently in Jueshi managing the Shi clan's businesses on your lordship's behalf. Get him to send a few men over to take charge, and that should address most of our concerns. What is of utmost urgency at present is the substantial sum of silver required to complete the port. I'm afraid it will prove difficult for Zhongbo to bear the costs alone. What do you suggest? Your lordship will return to Chudu eventually. At that time, all the merchants in the world will be your lordship's merchants. Yao Wenyu paused as a coughing fit took hold of him and continued only after he'd caught his breath. The trade that comes from the completion of the port will profit everyone. Why not let the merchants contribute to the port's financing? Let them claim a stake in it. We're doing like the stock market now. Your lordship only needs to open up Liuzhou in the future and adjust the tariffs accordingly. And these stakeholders will become the treasury of the new dynasty, and your lordship's treasury as well. And that wasn't all. Yan Haru's idea of building a port in Liuzhou had been truly brilliant. The bay could accommodate a sizable number of ships. The revival of Liuzhou and its surrounding towns was right on the horizon. This was a fertile field on the precipice of being reclaimed and put under the plow of progress. If these merchants were not muddle-headed fools, they'd jump at the chance to throw in with Shen Zichuan for a share of the profits. Yao Wenyu could imagine a day when the malady that was the noble clans was completely eradicated, and the nation would begin its recuperation and rehabilitation. Liuzhou would become Shen Zichuan's largest port linking the southeast. Perhaps even the first major port to connect to lands abroad. By then. He covered his mouth with his sleeve as he broke out into violent coughs. In his haste, he knocked over the teacup, spilling hot tea over his blanket and soaking his legs. Yuan Zhuo, Shen Zichuan called out in concern, bending closer. He'd already risen to his feet and caught the teacup. I feel like what Yao Wenyu was thinking was like, by then, I'll be dead already? Am I totally off the mark? Whatever Yao Wenyu had wanted to say had been lost. He had so many words unsaid, stuck in his chest and choked by his coughs. As he covered his mouth, he raised his other hand to signal that he was fine. Fei Sheng. Shen Zichuan saw blood seeping through Yao Wenyu's wide sleeve and barked, "Summon the physician." Oh, okay, there's blood. Great. Outside, Fei Sheng immediately turned to shout for the attendants. Chao Tianya had been struck by a sense of foreboding as soon as he heard the teacup fall inside. Before Shen Zichuan could call for him, he lifted the hanging screen and hurried in. Oh god, right. The chapter, that's the end of the chapter. The chapter was called A Future. And we have the two sick people whose magical special doctor just died, apparently. Or, you know, died a while ago. And they're both just, you know, finding this out. And they're both just, like, talking about the future and not talking about being sick and if they're going to be there for it. Ow. Okay. I don't think in the next chapter we are getting an immediate continuation of the scene. Which, it always kills me when that happens, because I'm like, I need to know what's happening right now. But, we're on page 87 for chapter 229, which is called Panlin. At Mount Luo, Gu Jin was about to climb back onto his horse to continue on his way when he received the letter from Duanzhou. He turned to look at Hua Lingyun, who was there for a fresh batch of horses, with a complicated expression. Did his lordship write this just before you set out? Beside his own horse, Huo Yu nodded as he unscrewed his water skin to take a swig. It was written just last night. Gujin tucked the letter into his robes and retrieved another, which he handed to Huo Yu. This is from Arya to his lordship. After a pause, he asked, "What did the embroidered uniform guard who went to investigate the carriage say?" That the Huzhou yeomen were hot on their tail, and the carriage driver was in such a desperate panic he drove right off the neglected road and into the stream below. Huo Yu hung the water skin back onto his saddle and carefully stowed Xiao Qi's letter in his own lapels. They sent a few men down to the stream and searched for hours. There were no survivors. Gujin's expression darkened further. He had set out to greet Master Yidong, with implicit orders to guard the Venerable Master on Xiao Qi's behalf. Now his mark was gone before he'd even arrived. Gujin stood rooted in place, utterly perplexed. He muttered, "What was the Venerable Master doing in Huzhou?" Wasn't that his home before he became a monk? Having ridden the entire night, Huo Yu reeked of sweat. Based on what Yan Haru said, it seems Master Yidong died of illness. If he didn't expect to live much longer, maybe he returned home to see his kin. The Venerable Master cut ties with the secular world the day he joined the monastery. Anyone still left in his family would be distant relations, not any close kin. Remembering Master Yidong's sojourns in the Libei homeland, he continued, "Besides, the Venerable Master agreed to return to Libei this year. Even if he didn't expect to live much longer, he would fulfill his promise first." Huo Yu had never crossed paths with Master Yidong before. Perhaps Gujin was right. He looked up and noticed the sky beginning to lighten. "I've rested enough. I should hit the road." Gujin nudged his horse aside to make way. Huo Yu turned and added, "When you reach the front line, remember to tell Arya that Tantai Hu wants to try out those new sabers, too. Tell Lao Hu to send a letter himself. I'm not heading that way." Gujin scraped mud off the soles of his boots, swung into the saddle, and pointed into the distance with his riding crop. "I'm off to Huzhou." Okay. We're back. Doctors crowded quietly on the veranda outside, not daring to raise their voices. Seeing that this was not the place for a discussion, Fei Sheng hurriedly arranged for the physicians to gather in the room next door. "Yes, Blue. What if Master Yidong had apprentices?" We're all crossing our fingers for that one. Kongling didn't enter to disturb Yao Wenyu's rest. Instead, he followed Fei Sheng and asked, "What do the doctors say?" Fei Sheng cast a glance at the lowered bamboo blinds and led Kongling a little aside. "They're terrified," he whispered. "Their prescriptions are even weaker than the ones we use in the guard. No one dares to go too heavy on the herbs for Mr. Yuanzhuo." See, I feel like he's in a situation where someone is gonna have to take a risk. Like, someone's gonna have to be like, "We're giving you the strong treatment." Because it's like, die if you do, die if you don't kind of situation. Yes, Henry, the tea pouring move was so cold. Blue, crossing your arms and your feet, too. Yeah. Brett Summer, except he gets fucking murked. Kongling was widely read, but he wasn't well versed in medicine. He held still for a moment, his expression one of shock. Then, Fei Sheng couldn't say for sure either. Everyone had pinned their hopes on the Venerable Master Yidong. Yan Haru's gambit had caught them all off guard. He ducked to avoid a newly sprouted branch in the courtyard. We were just talking about apprentices, and there's a newly sprouted branch in the courtyard. Don't get my hopes up with the metaphors, okay? But I'm just saying, like, His lordship wrote to good Ching Ching last night and bade him search for physicians in Jueshi's 13 cities. But they likely won't arrive in Duanzhou until the 6th month. How would they survive the next 3 months? Fei Sheng didn't dare speak out of turn. He had been on tenterhooks too as he watched the physicians coming and going all night. Yao Wenyu continued to push himself to his limits. In Sizhou, he had first drained his energy to placate the masses of scholars who had come to join Shen Zichuan, then stayed up in discussions with Kongling and the others for nights on end to make arrangements for the 6 prefectures' regional administrations. He had then immediately traveled from Sizhou to Duanzhou. It was no wonder he hadn't been well since he arrived. Kongling stood silent for a moment. Wait here so I can update the governor. His lordship hasn't slept the whole night. He's still waiting in the hall for news. Then please convince my master to rest. Fei Sheng had been shaken by the sight of Yao Wenyu coughing up blood. He chased Kongling a few steps. He seemed in low spirits after the news of Master Yidong's demise, and now he's worried about Mr. Yuanzhuo. I pray he doesn't fall sick too. With Chao Tianya and me keeping watch here, nothing serious will happen. He should sleep. Kongling agreed and rushed out of the courtyard, lifting the hem of his robe in haste. When he arrived at Chen Zichuan's courtyard, he found the prefectural governor standing on the veranda, listening to Ding Tao. Spotting Kongling, he nodded for Ding Tao to pause. Ever since the incident in Duanzhou where he had glimpsed the unguarded ruthlessness in Chen Zichuan's eyes, Ding Tao had been well behaved. He promptly shut his mouth and retreated to make way for Kongling. After deliberating a moment, Kongling said, "He's just fallen asleep. They're decocting medicine now. Chao Tianya is overseeing everything, so your lordship needn't worry." It was peaceful and quiet in the courtyard. Shen Zichuan came down the stairs to meet him. None of the physicians gave a diagnosis. Kongling noted Shen Zichuan's displeased expression and fell into step at his side. They are all country doctors. They've never treated someone like Yuanzhuo before. They don't dare to fool us with common prescriptions. And they're cautious in everything they say. Even so, they're doing everything they can. No one dares be careless. Astute as he was, Shen Zichuan knew that no one among this group of physicians could treat Yuanzhuo. They would all err on the side of prescribing rest and nourishment, doing their best to avoid any risk. Send an urgent missive to Yu Xiaozai. Shen Zichuan stopped in his tracks. Tell him to keep an eye out for good physicians in every prefecture during his inspection rounds. He's to send all the ones he can find to Duanzhou. Draw the consultation fees from my private coffers. We'll give them whatever they ask. A guard arrived with a letter. Kongling delayed his answer so Shen Zichuan could read it in peace. Shen Zichuan turned over the letter and saw good Ching Ching's personal seal. When he finished reading, he handed it to Kongling. The battle in Shudu is over. Kongling took a moment to read the letter. What Marshal Qi lacks at present is not military provisions, but a noble rank and title. The Empress Dowager recognized this. Yet she stubbornly persisted in trying to coerce her and ended up giving Shui Yanqing a helping hand instead. The Empress Dowager simply has no way to back down, Shen Zichuan said. She wants Qi Juyan's troops, but she has no bargaining chips left with which to win the marshal over. If push comes to shove, Han Cheng and his 20,000 men can't beat anyone. What Shen Zichuan had initially considered a strategy of befriending a distant state while attacking a nearby enemy had long been turned on its head. Chudu's fatigue was obvious. In the east, where they faced Zhongbo and Li Bei, they had only the 8 great battalions to aid them in an emergency. And with the issue of the commoners' fields blown up to such proportions, Dan Cheng had no attention to spare to maintaining a military defense. Qi Juyan was the last straw Chudu had to clutch at. Kongling sucked a breath through his teeth When he reached the end of the letter, Pan Xiangjie and Pan Lin are dead. This chapter is specifically called Pan Lin, so I wonder what that means? The Empress Dowager is playing against Shui Shoujuo. Shen Zichuan looked up at the overcast sky, where storm clouds were gathering. How could she escape unscathed? In Chudu, the rainy season had begun. When the Grand Secretariat wanted to hold Han Cheng accountable for the debacle in the prison, Han Cheng stuck to his narrative that the officials the 8th grade battalions had killed were Zhongbo's spies. Both sides engaged in a war of words in the imperial court, and it was amid all this that the news of Pan Xiangjie's death was reported. Only then did Liang Cuishan recall that no one had paid Pan Xiangjie any heed when he cried for help that day, locked up in the innermost part of the prison. The situation had been chaotic. Pan Xiangjie had suffocated to death from the smoke in his cell. It seemed the jailers had only found him when they went to clean up. It was Pan Lin who admitted to the collusion regarding the granaries, Shui Shoujuo had announced in Mingli Hall. He was also the one who turned over the detailed accounts from the Ministry of Revenue. This man doesn't deserve to be punished with death. Tenyu too found what had happened to Pan Lin regrettable. He nodded. That's not to say he should be exonerated. Justice cannot be tampered with, but it can be tempered with mercy. Kong Cho had pondered for some time, looking through the confession statement presented by the Ministry of Justice over and over. It's true Pan Lin confessed, but that was only after the Imperial Court began its investigation. He's been an accessory to this crime since discrepancies first started to appear in the accounts years ago. He may be spared execution, but not punishment. In the end, the Grand Secretariat dismissed Pan Lin from his post, demoted him in status, and exiled him to Huaizhou. But as the Dancheng case was yet unresolved, Pan Lin was to remain at the relay station and await the court summons in the interim. Unlike the nobility of Pan Xiangjie's generation, Pan Lin had studied to be a civil official and considered himself a scholar. He took pride in his occupation, and because of that, he had never gotten along with dilettantes like Shui Shouyi. Yet now he was reduced from a young master of a noble clan to a guilty commoner, and he had lost his father on top of that. The abrupt change in his fortunes compounded his plight at the relay station, where he was disdained by his guards and handed only cold leftovers to eat. Long ago, Shui Shouyi had gotten into a spat with Pan Lin at the banquet celebrating Xiao Chia's conferment. I think somewhere in the recesses of my brain, I remember that. So many things have happened. Shui Shouyi, intending to bury the hatchet before Pan Lin was expelled from the capital, went to see Pan Lin, bringing some delicacies to share. Yeah, on the boat, yes. I knew there was a spat on the boat. And it was a Shui and it was a somebody. So, okay. There was Shui Shouyi and Pan Lin. The servant at the relay station led Shui Shouyi in. Looking around the cramped and narrow room, Shui Shouyi asked, "This is where Pan Chengzhe is staying? He's the young master of the Pan clan and the vice minister of the Ministry of Revenue. How can you keep him in a room like this?" The servant opened the door with a smarmy smile. "Weren't the properties of the Pan clan confiscated by the court? He's a criminal. This arrangement was made by the Imperial Court. How would we servants dare to defy it?" He pushed the door open and cautioned, "My lord mustn't stay too long. If the Ministry of Justice catches wind of this, it'll be my neck." Shui Shouyi's scrawny body hunched as he craned his neck to look through the doorway. Pan Lin was sitting at a rickety desk by the window. The room was gloomy, and rain was leaking in everywhere. The floorboards were already soaked through. Ponlin's robe was damp, as were his boots. Stubble shadowed his jaw, and he was still wearing the same clothes he'd worn in the prison. He looked very much the worse for wear. Shue Shouyi strode through the door carrying the food box and called gently, "Changzhe, I'm here to see you." Ponlin looked up. He regarded him for a long while before saying, "Have a seat." Setting the box on the table, Shue Shouyi pulled up a chair. He surveyed the room. "You are, at the very least. Well, I'll go talk to them later. Even another room here would be better than this." Ponlin's eyes reddened at the rims. He was a forlorn figure as he sat under the fat drops of rain leaking through the roof. Shue Shouyi fidgeted. Before things could get too awkward, he took the initiative to speak. "I'm not here today to mock you. You are going to Huaizhou, and it's so far away. Once we part, you and I will never see each other again. So I wanted to see you off." Oh, do we have any inklings that they, like, made up and, like, I don't know, that these two cared about each other? Like, but, or was it just like, is this it? By the way, they made up? I'm I have no words. Ponlin remained unmoved. Shue Shouyi hesitated. For some reason, he found himself gripped by a feeling of melancholy. He was of legitimate birth, as was Ponlin. How could lawful sons such as themselves end up in such a state? Tears shone in his eyes as he continued. "Changzhe, about what happened during the Marquis's banquet last year. I'm sorry. I heard you let Yuanzhuo go, and I admire you for that. You're a man of talent, and you've only suffered misfortune due to your clan. The Grand Secretary spared you from execution, because he appreciates talented men like you. Once you arrive in Huaizhou, you'll have the chance to show your mettle again." Even Shue Shouyi didn't believe these words. They were all men who depended on their clans for survival. The field tax scandal was already known far and wide. Ponlin would be spat on in the streets when he arrived in Huaizhou. After a moment of silence, Ponlin spoke up, using Shue Shouyi's courtesy name, Pingjing. Like Shue Shoujuo's Yanqing, Shue Shouyi's courtesy name had been given to him by his grandfather, Old Master Shue. He hurriedly responded, "Aye." Back when I first assumed my post as the Vice Minister of the Ministry of Revenue, I held the real account books in my hand for a long time. But in the end, I didn't hand them over to Secretariat Elder High. I abetted the villains, bringing untold suffering to the common folk of the 8 cities. My death is not to be regretted. And there's nothing I could say that would vindicate me. The storm in Chudu has raged for years, and now there is Shue Yanqing. Ponlin looked at Shue Shouyi, as if seeing his own self many years ago, with choices still before him. The glory of the 8 cities has come to an end. A deafening thunderclap crashed overhead, and a bolt of lightning lit up the room for an instant. Shue Shouyi thought Ponlin would give him some heartfelt advice, but he merely said, "You should go." Shue Pingjing pushed the box across the table. "I brought you some food." He trailed off. As he sat, the rain grew heavier and heavier. The servant outside had come by several times to hurry him. When he at last rose to his feet, his robe was wet to the knee. He bowed in farewell to Ponlin, who stood, straightened his clothes, and returned the courtesy. Shue Shouyi couldn't bear to look at him a moment longer. He stepped into the corridor, but couldn't tell which way was out. Ponlin listened to his receding footsteps, then sat back down at his table. Throughout it all, he had never touched the food box Shueisho Yi brought. He picked up his brush and neatly wrote the words, "Statement of Guilt." This letter was not for the imperial court, but for Pan Xiangjie, a farewell from a son to his father. The letter he wrote was a long one, as if he didn't know how to face his father yet. When he set his brush down, he wept, then cleaned himself up and lay down on the tattered mat with his clothes in order. He never opened his eyes again. So, that's the end of the chapter. I'm not sure if he took something to poison himself, or it's sounding like he just lay there and just didn't eat and just died because he didn't take care of himself. Okay, I don't know why I feel like Tang Ching is really good at doing this. It's like, hey, here's this character that you didn't really care about, and I'm gonna make you care about them right now. Like, what? Like, why am I feeling these feelings? Like, what just happened there? Oh my god, Jesus. Okay. Blue, you said, I bet Shenzi Chuan would have taken him in and given him a farmhouse somewhere. If only as thanks for saving Yao and you. But I appreciate the accountability. Right. Yeah, so that was a lot. And it is past time to take a break now. So, I'm gonna do that. And when I come back, we will be on chapter 230, which is called The Fleeting Months of Spring. I don't like that. Not one bit. Don't put the word fleeting in your chapter title. Hi, I'm back. I'm back, and I'm nervous, and I'm not ready to find out what is going on. Every new chapter, and especially every new chapter title, I'm like, what does it mean? What does that mean? What is happening? And I can see that there's art on the next page. Yeah, exactly, Marty. Everything is concerning now. I'm scared things are getting bad too. Yay, Henry, you caught up. And also, good to see you, Nina. Okay, so we're on page 97 for chapter 230, The Fleeting Months of Spring. Chao Tianya leaned back in the rattan chair. Several red threads were pressed between his lips, which he braided with deft fingers. Not there being literal red threads. What are we doing here? The moonlight after midnight was a watery glow sliding over the bridge of his nose. His heavy-lidded eyes appeared rather lonely. His chin rested on the table, covered with a silk brocade cloth. It hadn't been touched in days. Yao Wenyu didn't make a sound as he opened his eyes and turned to look at Chao Tianya. Chao Tianya was like the solitary, lonesome moon hovering above an empty valley after a rainstorm, clear and distant. That unbridled wind had turned into last night's dream, leaving only its shadow upon him. Yao Wenyu had kept the ball with its vibrant silk ribbons from the day of the horse race. But he understood he would never walk to that man's side to give it back. Is that... I'm not sure if, like, is giving back the ball part of the meaning behind it? Are you supposed to, like, share the ball? Or would giving it back mean that he was rejecting it? And he's sort of reluctantly accepting it. I'm sort of unsure what that means. This is something that could use a footnote. Theirs was the ephemeral 3 months of spring that walked inexorably toward a quiet end, gone as soon as they'd begun. Okay, yeah, Blue, you said giving it back sounds like reciprocating. I'm gonna go with that. Oh, and maybe he feels like he'll never be able to repay the love and favors that Chao Tianya has given him. Oh, okay. Okay, I can see it. Chao Tianya took the red braid from between his lips and tied off the tail with a flourish. He reached for Yao Wenyu's hand and wrapped the finished cord around his wrist. Oh, guys. Oh my god. Okay. Alright. This is the art. The cat's making a cameo, too. Okay. Alright. That was rude. Hidden behind the lowered drapes, Yuan Zhuo peered through the gap at the man inches away. Silently, he started to laugh. Even as he did, dampness slowly spread on his pillow. Chao Tianya didn't lift the drapes. The mere contact of their fingers conveyed the warmth between them, as though this was the greatest intimacy they could manage. Any closer, and it would vanish in a blink. Through it all, Yao and Yu never spoke, as if he had never woken up at all. And there's a scene break. When Chen Zichuan arrived the next morning, Yao and Yu was already up. He bent slightly toward Chen Zichuan in what was meant to be a bow. My sudden illness yesterday held up official business, Yao and Yu said, picking up the mess of Wei Qi pieces on the board. They're playing Wei Qi again. I wanted to finish my discussion with your lordship today, while I'm feeling well enough. Chen Zichuan took a seat. Your illness is only just starting to show improvement. You can rest half a month if you need to before continuing our discussion. I have nothing better to do while I'm sick. Yao and Yu contemplated for a few moments, then continued. The port in Liuzhou is a priority. Completing it will give us a seat at the discussion table in Jueshi. Yao Wenyu's considerations were different from those of Kongling and the others. He was much more far-sighted, and in this current climate, as hostilities grew between Zhongbo and Chudu, he preferred to focus on collecting virtuous talents for Shen Zichuan than on killing the Zhou Empire's officials. Your lordship thinks you're lacking generals, but in my view, it's just the opposite. Yao and Yu set each Wei Qi piece back in place. In the future, the East will not want for fierce generals. Wu Ziyu, Tantai Hu. These are qualified generals capable of leading an army. Once the war is won, with them guarding the frontiers, your lordship will have nothing to worry about on the Eastern Front. What your lordship will need, then, are capable ministers and officials. As gifted as Chung Feng is, he's unwilling to leave Zhongbo, and while Zhou Gui is loyal, he's not suited for any greater responsibilities. On the other hand, Jueshi and its 13 cities have for years survived without falling into the noble clan's clutches, precisely because the region has a capable minister, Jiang Qingshan. The real reason Xue Yanqing could make such headway in the imperial court is because of his supporters in the pragmatists faction. The heir apparent was only his foot in the door. These supporters are not highly ranked, but they are key in deciding whether the reforms he wants are pushed through. They work in Jueshi for the good of the people, and hope to revitalize the Li clan's empire and bring back the glory days of Yongyi. They are scholars with far more boldness of vision than the capital's ministers, and are likely the last worthy officials of the Zhou Empire. The path to the top was difficult in more ways than one. A change of dynasty meant the lifelong dreams of innumerable scholars would be cut short. Even with the imperial court in such a state of decay, neither Hai Liangyi nor Xue Shoujuo had ever thought about replacing the Li clan, because the mere suggestion was comparable to patricide. According to all the laws of society, the relationship between a ruler and his subjects was that of a father and his sons. The Li clan had sat on the throne for centuries. It went deeper than just shouting, "Long live your majesty," to the reigning ruler. It meant stability, generations of rulers and subjects upholding the official, legitimate lineage. When, Shen Zichuan set foot in Chudu once again, what the prefectural governor would have to conquer was more than one man or woman. It was the legitimacy of the Son of Heaven seated tall and majestic on the dragon throne. He needed heaven to bestow him the right to slay the sovereign, or he would never escape the infamy of being labeled a treacherous subject. I guess he needs something like a convenient secret lineage that he never knew about, or something like that. Or maybe that won't be the case at all. I don't know. I don't know how he's gonna do it. Yet even the mandate of heaven was far from enough. He would need to convince the surviving officials who'd sworn themselves to the Li clan to willingly put themselves at his disposal. Otherwise, even if he conquered this vast empire, he would never achieve the flourishing era of prosperity of which Qi Huilian had dreamed. Shui Yanqing's cleanup of the 8 cities' fields should have been a great victory, Yao and Yu continued, but he was too hasty. The 8 cities' field taxes make up a significant portion of Chudu's tax revenue. Now that he has so thoroughly removed the Pan clan of Dancheng, he's left with only 2 options. The first is to push ahead and investigate the remaining 7 cities, resurveying the lands as fast as he can. The second is to slow down and give the remaining noble families a chance to make up tax arrears. If he goes through with the first option, the fields must be returned to the commoners. But those commoners have long since left their homes to scrape out a living in Zhongbo. Reorganizing the household registry of every city will hold up plowing and sowing this year. In that case, the problem of feeding the common folk in Chudu and the 8 cities, Jueshi and Qidong this autumn will fall squarely on Jueshi and Hezhou. If he chooses the second option, the responsibility of the field tax deficits will be spread between the 8 cities, which undoubtedly means the noble clans will continue to pass the costs on to the commoners. Living under an unforgiving regime is no better than living with ferocious beasts. To the people, nothing will have changed. Yeah, Blue, you're right that, like, he's done so many things. He has proven himself that he could be a leader. But the people, with all their ideas about, like, who's the legitimate ruler, I guess, are very hard to prove things to. It feels, like, insurmountable. But also, yeah, it's sort of like, I'm still, the one thing I'm, like, having trouble with in my head is, like, the idea of, like, so what does Shen Zichuan want out of being a ruler? If Shen Zichuan wants to be the emperor, like, what does he want out of that? Like, I understand that he wants power to achieve certain ends, but I'm kind of trying to, like, envision that last step, and I'm like, what does he really want out of all of this? And I feel like we still don't have that. It's, yeah. But his manipulative writer subordinate? Yeah, if he wants to be the emperor, he will be the emperor, but does he really want to? Yes. Like, what if he's going along with everyone thinking that's his goal, and then he turns around at the end and he's like, never mind. But I don't know. Yeah, it's it's volume 7. Why do we still not understand the main character? I feel like I understand him so much better than I did, like, you know, before. But I just feel like there's a missing piece. So it's not like I completely don't understand him, but there's, like, an element to it that's like, there's one more piece that needs to click into place for me. And then maybe I'll get it. By the time the grain requisitions run Jueshi into the ground, the commoners of the 13 cities will have barely enough to keep their stomachs from growling. If your lordship uses the port of Liuzhou as a foothold to develop an east-west waterway and build out the north-south road, Huzhou and Zhongbo will be able to alleviate Duishi's burden. Sunlight slanted beneath the eaves. Holding a Weiqi piece between his fingers, Yao Wenyu took a moment to catch his breath before continuing. Your lordship presumably had a plan in mind long before you decided to kill Yan Heru. Huzhou is right next to Qidong. Shen Zichuan set down his own piece. If I don't take that land for my own, how can I sleep at night? Shen Zichuan had spoken bluntly. If Qi Juyan were to go all out to protect the Li clan, then Dongzhou, so close to Qidong, would be Shen Zichuan's key vulnerability. He needed to control Huzhou, an even more important strategic point. Only then would he be able to meet Qi Juyan at the table. All Yan Heru had ever thought about was business, but Shen Zichuan had far more than business on his mind. Since Qi Juyan had joined forces with Shui Shoujuo in the Dancheng case, the heir apparent would surely bestow a noble title upon her. Very soon, she would become a marquis of the Zhou Empire. Also, I guess this means, because they got news of the battle in Chudu being over, I guess this means that the heir apparent has survived. Because if she didn't, I would think that would be a big news item that would have found its way to them. But we haven't returned back to that moment, so I'm kind of like, what's going on there? Very soon, she would become a marquis of the Zhou Empire. The garrison troops of the Qidong's 5 commanderies were situated just to the south of Dongbo. Shen Zichuan had to choke off Qidong's route west, on which Huzhou was the way station. Qi Shiyu is old. Qi Juyan was always Qidong's best choice for Grand Marshal, Shen Zichuan continued. Lu Guangbai remains in Libei, because he no longer wishes to be a general of the Zhou Empire. Qi Juyan has had to mend the gap in the Bianjun Commandery herself. Chudu wants her to guard the throne, but even if she agrees, she has to be able to travel there. Knowing Qi Juyan, perhaps she really could make it in time. This was why Shen Zichuan had to obstruct the roads by any means necessary. See, I'm still, sometimes the politics still have my head spinning a little bit, but I've been constantly concerned about, like, oh no, don't make, like, Shen Zichuan and Chao Jie enemies of Qi Juyan. And I feel like we're constantly getting closer to that, and now I'm like, is that what's happening? Not for, like, personal reasons, but just strategically, but I'm just like, is this really happening? Do we have to do this? Sorry, I lost my place because I was concerned about that. Yeah, I think I read this out loud already, but just to be sure. Knowing Qi Juyan, perhaps she really could make it in time. That was why Shen Zichuan had to obstruct the roads by any means necessary. I'm like, what? Why? Marshal Qi has been greatly troubled by money in recent years. Her willingness to mobilize against the Qingshu tribe was her assessing her options, Yao Wenyu said amid a quiet coughing fit. Shen Zichuan left the topic there. Chao Tianya has to lead the embroidered uniform cavalry now. He's at the military training grounds all day, so it's to be expected that he has less time to keep you company. I wrote to Shifu and asked him to come to Duanzhou to take care of you. Yao Wenyu didn't refuse, merely dabbing at his mouth with his handkerchief. He's such a long way off. It must be a tiring journey to come all this way for me. Shen Zichuan spotted the red bracelet on Yuan Zhuo's wrist, hidden by his sleeve until he raised his hand, but didn't ask. Who knew, who had just woken up, brushed against the door as she patted over. Chudu was once your home, Shen Zichuan said. Shi Hongshuan told me you always returned to the capital every spring. Next year, or perhaps in a few years, you can see the springtime scenery properly again. Yeah, when you knew this was Shen Zichuan's way of comforting him. He flashed him a small smile and changed the subject. The Dancheng case is coming to a close. Where will Panlin be exiled to? Shen Zichuan lowered his folding fan to hold Hu Nu back. Kong Cho meant to send him to Huaizhou, but he went on a hunger strike at the Chudu relay station. He starved himself to death. Right, we're back to gay pain. Yeah. Yeah, when you sat in silence for a long time. Panlin had achieved success at a young age, and his career as an official had been smooth sailing. His heated words to Xue Shouyi at the feast back then had turned out to be prophetic. He had starved to death. I wish I could remember what he said to Xue Shouyi at the feast. And the fact that he said it to Xue Shouyi and that was who showed up for him at the end? Okay. After being encumbered by his lineage all his life, he was finally free. Yao and Yu turned his gaze to the courtyard. Chudu was indeed his former home, but there were no longer any sights worth going back for. That's the end of the chapter. What do you mean? Okay, we have one more chapter today. But really, who said it's been, yes, Henry, you said, I feel like I've experienced 5 streams worth of ominous shit. Me too. We're on page 105, chapter 231, which is called Faints. And in case you're like, which word is that? I guess I could also just spell it. It's not faints like fainting, it's faints like F-E-I-N-T-S. The day Panlin died, Li Jianting's condition finally stabilized. Okay, we're getting an update on her, because I wanted to know what was up with that. Oh, Henry, you said, and the hunger strike was not only foreshadowed and set up enriching his characterization, it was also foreshadowing Yao and Yu. Yeah, what you just said, Blue. Rereading will be devastating. Oh, man. Oh, goodness. The maids and eunuchs in her palace had barely a moment to weep for joy before they were hauled off to the prison. And doesn't that include Feng Chuan? I'm worried about Feng Chuan. Henry, I think I know what you're talking about, but my brain is like, I'm like forgetting that quote. Exactly. Or do I know what you're talking about? I must know what you're talking about, but like, my bandwidth for like remembering quotes from things, no matter how like impactful they are to me in the moment, it is so, it's so small, so I'm just like, I don't know anymore. That's why I have to reread things. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I looked down trying to find my place again, and I saw the word condiment. Like condiments. And I was like, surely that's not the word that I'm looking at. But it is apparently the word that I'm looking at. Since the heir apparent had been poisoned, the condiment service, capitalized, that stocked the kitchens was promptly shut down for investigation. And all the eunuchs on duty were taken into custody. You're deeply worried I'd say condom? I did. Yeah, again, I'm worried about Feng Chuan. Can we talk about him? Fu Man, given his seniority in the palace since the reign of the Tianjin Emperor, was placed in charge of this case and put the eunuchs through a ruthless interrogation. I don't like that Fu Man is in charge, because wasn't he kind of like, uh, spying on Li Jianting? He was doing something. Where, I don't know why I keep losing my place. I'm so sorry. We just have one more chapter to get through. I can do it, I promise. Okay. Lao Zuzong, a junior eunuch, cried as he sprawled over the bench, unable to stand the beating. Please have mercy. Dressed in a python-patterned robe of 100 pleats, and wearing a round black eunuch's hat, Fu Man stood with his hands behind his back and studied the art on the wall. I know not to trust the snake imagery. The eunuchs holding the flogging rods were all old members of the Eastern Depot. Skilled in the art of flogging, they beat the eunuch until he was barely conscious. Mercy! The junior eunuch choked with sobs. Fu Man looked back. All of you were on duty when the air was poisoned. If you want to live, you had better tell me everything. These inner palace eunuchs had taken up their posts after the Tianjin Emperor's time, and had no experience with intrigue. None of them had any idea what the heir apparent had even been poisoned with. There was nothing they could tell. Think. What did the heir apparent eat and wear that day? Fu Man asked patiently. There are so many people in... I can't take this seriously. Okay. I can do this. There are so many... Why? I'm sorry. It's just the stupidest name for something. There are so many people in the condiment service. Perhaps a few bad actors infiltrated your ranks. You've always been close with the others there, haven't you? So why can't you think of anything? The eunuch caught his hint, but he didn't dare speculate on where Fu Man was leading him. He hemmed and hawed without saying a word. Fu Man flung his sleeves in exasperation at the eunuch's denseness, then ordered the old eunuch with the rod to continue the flogging. Blood saturated the young eunuch's mouth. Digging his fingers into the bench, he whimpered, Stop it. I'll tell you." Fu Man ignored him. The young eunuch gulped down blood. The condiment service. And the garden service. There were new faces I didn't recognize. Only then did Fu Man turn slightly and say, voice soft, "Did you speak to them?" The eunuch shook his head hard, not daring to answer. He raised his eyes tentatively, trying to read Fu Man's expression, then repeated in a small voice, "I didn't recognize them." "If you didn't recognize them, how do you know which services they belong to?" Fu Man asked patiently. "Someone must have told you, and that was how you knew." "It was the one who stands guard at the door," the eunuch answered. Shh. Fu Man bent down. "How can a guard like that get close to the heir apparent? The one who serves the heir most frequently is usually the one who knows the most." Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. What was I just saying? The young eunuch didn't dare breathe too heavily as he followed Fu Man's lead and answered, "Feng Chuan is usually the one serving." Fu Man clapped softly. "There you go. That wasn't so hard, was it?" "I know that Feng Chuan would not do this. Don't tell me that Feng Chuan would do this, or I will have an aneurysm." Like, this has to be like someone trying to set him up, right? With the case in Fu Man's hands, the chances of identifying the true culprit were less than zero. In fact, the one who had planted people in Li Jianting's palace at Han Cheng's instigation was none other than himself. It was none other than Fu Man. Yep. The poison... Oh, God. Okay, well, they're telling us right now. The poison had nothing to do with the condiments service. It lay in the chopsticks Li Jianting had eaten with that day. During the uproar that broke out when she collapsed, Fu Man had gotten someone to replace the original chopsticks and clean up any traces. Oh, yes, Faze, you're right. We had Feng Chuan's POV taking care of Li Jianting, so we knew he didn't do it. Like, it would have not made sense the way he was acting. Yeah, okay. So Fu Man, of course, is responsible. It was the chopsticks. That... Oh, God. Okay. I need Feng Chuan to get out of this. But I'm worried that, like, it's gonna be, like, a situation where all the couples aside from our main couple are, like, doomed or something. I really need that to not be the case. I need them to get out of this alive. Fu Man stepped out of the interrogation hall. As he looked toward the courtyard's entrance, he spotted a sedan and its bearers waiting for him under a pagoda tree. The supervising officials from the Ministry of Justice had already left. Fu Man was on guard as he lifted the hem of his robe and strode forward with a smile on his face. What distinguished person is looking for me? Send a message and I'll be there. No need to come and invite me personally. Although I do happen to have a case to attend to right now and can't get away. The curtain on the sedan twitched aside, and Han Cheng's sneering voice floated out. It's been only a few days since I saw you, and you've started to put on airs in front of me, you son of a bitch. What? I can't order you around now? This motherfucker. Fu Man bent obediently at the waist. This humble servant thought it was those old fogies from the Grand Secretariat. They've been sticking to me like glue while I investigate this case. They're irritating to the extreme. I never expected it to be your excellency. Henry, you currently eating using chopsticks, pause mid-bite. But of course, the moment this humble servant sees you, it's as if, how should I put it? Like a baby sparrow seeking refuge in the woods. He played dumb, knowing Han Cheng was a sucker for mindless flattery. Sure enough, Han Cheng brightened. He drew down the curtain and commanded, "Follow me." Fu Man cursed under his breath as he walked behind the sedan, keeping his resentment pent up in his heart. When they arrived at their destination, Han Cheng's private residence, he knew the man wanted to ask him about the heir apparent's case. But the moment he stepped through the door, before he could even start toadying up to Han Cheng, the gleam of blades of Han Cheng's men nearly blinded him. He forgot what he was going to say and dropped to his knees. Look at the guts on you. Han Cheng poured tea for himself, but he didn't tell Fu Man to get up. You thought yourself a second Pan Rugui? Are you even worthy? No, definitely not worthy. Bracing himself against the ground, Fu Man bent his mouth in an apologetic smile. This humble servant is but a lowly slave. How could I compare to the Lao Zuzong? I wouldn't dream of it. Han Cheng set the teapot down. I told you to poison Li Jianting. What did you give her? Fu Man's back was drenched in a cold sweat. He couldn't hesitate. He recited what he'd rehearsed to himself countless times. This humble servant did as Commander Han said and gave her swift pursuit. Okay, did he recite it to himself because he's nervous about being questioned? Or did he recite it to himself because he's lying? Did he not give her the poison he, like, promised to give her? Did he give her, like, a less powerful poison on purpose? Who? Is he secretly trying to, like, not kill her? Like, what is going on? How strange. Oh yeah, sorry. Did I read, this humble servant did as Commander Han said and gave her swift pursuit? How strange, Han Cheng sneered. A poison that can take out several strong men can't even kill one woman. Fu Man felt a chill at the back of his neck. Those were real blades, and by now they were pressing right against his skin. The muscles on his face twitched. He slapped himself and cried. Such an accusation is a most terrible attack on my devotion. How could this humble servant dare plot with an outsider to harm a man I revere as my own father? Shui Yanqing, Kong Qiu, and the others detest eunuchs and order me around like livestock. I really did use swift pursuit. I even kept the chopsticks. I would never be sloppy. Fu Man paused to wipe his tears. I am puzzled too. It's truly mind-boggling. It was swift pursuit, without a doubt. But the air only threw up a few times, that's all. If that's not absurd, I don't know what is. Did somebody have an antidote? Did they know that this might happen, and they had an antidote available? What is going on? Han Chung was livid. Li Jianting's life and death directly affected his plans. He'd deployed the 8 great battalions on the gamble that the heir apparent would die that night, but to everyone's surprise, Li Jianting had pulled through. The Dan Chung case was still open, and Shui Shoujuo intended to continue investigating. Now that the Pan clan was gone, next on the chopping block would be the Hulian Marquis Fei clan. Everyone from the remaining 7 cities was in danger. Have you mentioned the poisoning to anyone else? I wouldn't dare, Fu Man gasped. That better be true. Han Chung flung away the teacup in his hand. You are the one who botched this, so clean it up. None of the people you placed in her palace can be allowed to live. Use this opportunity to dispose of them all. Had Li Jianting been poisoned with swift pursuit, she would be in her grave now. Either someone had intercepted and swapped the poison, or Fu Man had never poisoned her with swift pursuit in the first place. I feel like that's telling us that that's still a possibility. We still don't really know. Oh my god. Regardless, the people serving her in her bedchamber were all loose ends. It was very possible someone else had slipped their people in. Han Chung knew eunuchs were a crafty lot. These castrated vermin were second to none at trimming their sails and going wherever the wind blew. Fu Man was no different. Now that the noble clans had taken a hit, there was no guarantee Fu Man wouldn't get any funny ideas. Keeping him around any longer was asking for trouble. Han Chung was suspicious by nature, and by now he was like a hunted bird, startled by the mere twang of a bow. He stood and glared at Fu Man, then took a few steps toward the eunuch, ready to end him on the spot. Sensing that his head was in imminent danger of parting from his shoulders, Fu Man cried out in desperation. The Grand Secretary! He personally ordered me to investigate the case. There's still a chance to turn things around. Don't worry, Commander. I'll clean this up properly. The supervising officials from the Ministry of Justice are all familiar with me. If anything goes awry, I'll come to you with my own head on a platter. Unfortunately, Han Chung still needed him, at least until the investigation was complete. Taking in Fu Man's ghastly pallor and his useless cringing, he merely said, Mess up again, and the Empress Dowager will be the one who takes her head, even if I want to save you. You want to be top eunuch, but you are not there yet. Fu Man concurred, his heart in his mouth. There's a scene break. While gray clouds and misty rain dominated the sky for days on end in Chudu, sun shone down on the front lines of the north. On Xiao Jiming's orders, the commanding generals of Libei now rotated through the 3 sand camps. Today, it was Xiao Chie's turn at first sand camp. I hope that the sun is a good sign here. Lu Guangbai stepped out of his tent to receive him, and Xiao Qie removed his helmet in greeting before tossing it over so he could dismount. Lu Guangbai jumped to catch Xiaoqia's helmet and saw the large dent on it. Hasen's much better than we are at playing with catapults. Xiaoqia handed his reins to Chen Yang and removed his arm guard. They destroyed Second Sand Camp's watchtower yesterday. Better send someone to Shifu. Have him dispatch craftsmen over there to repair it. Jiming only just sent a group of craftsmen this way. If it's urgent, we can send the craftsmen at border camp up for now. Lu Guangbai handed the helmet to Chen Yang. The wall of Third Sand Camp was repaired, only to collapse again. Chen Cho Shifu can't spare you any men. Xiaoqia's skin had tanned from exposure in recent months. Watching Meng circle over the camp, he said, "The Biansha horsemen's numbers are increasing." After Xiaoqia took out the Duanzhou scorpions, Hasen had started to intensify his attacks. It was glaringly obvious by the third month. Hasen was frantically assembling men in the east, and the Biansha horsemen's numbers were skyrocketing. Last year, the horsemen could only launch an assault with one main force, while the rest of their soldiers carried out smaller-scale sneak attacks. Yeah, I also don't remember him getting hit by a catapult. Like, that just happened off-page, off-screen. Also, yes, I was just thinking, like, yes, he's tan. Yes, thank you. Yeah. we have like two, exactly. We have like two not pale Danmei guys. There's one more Danmei I know of. Wait, I think it's a Danmei. Yes. There's one more Danmei I vaguely know of where one of them is tan. And it has an adaptation out right now. And it's like a gangster mafia show. And it's in Hong Kong. And I'm forgetting the name. Totally different, but one of them is tan, and people were happy because, like, the actor was actually tan, and they were like, oh my god, they did that. And it was, like, a big deal. It's, Sammy's Children's Day. It seemed interesting. I watched an episode or two, but the actors are Mandarin speakers, and then they dubbed them in Cantonese. So it's a little strange to watch because you can tell that it is dubbed. But other than that, it seemed cool. And again, but that makes only 3 Danmei I know of with like tan characters canonically, so I need more of those. Okay, sorry for the... We will get to the end of this. We're almost there. Okay. Qianzhou Shifu can't spare you any men. Xiaoqia's skin at... Okay, I read that. Watching Meng circle over the camp, he said, "The Biansha horsemen's numbers are increasing." After Xiaoqia took out the Duanzhou scorpions, Hasen had started to intensify his attacks. It was glaringly obvious by the third month. Hasen was frantically assembling men in the east, and the Biansha horsemen's numbers were skyrocketing. Last year, the horsemen could only launch an assault with one main force, while the rest of their soldiers carried out smaller-scale sneak attacks. I'm so sorry, I read that already. We're catching up. Now Hasen could split his forces to launch full-scale attacks on 2 camps at the same time. Amor sent Hasen north, but he didn't go south himself. He went east, Lu Guangbai said. He wants to expand his territory deep into the desert, and bring the remaining 6 tribes under his rule as soon as possible. It's likely Amor's newly acquired forces are giving Hasen the numbers to launch simultaneous attacks. Xiaoqia wiped the dust from his cheeks, with a pensive expression. But Hasen has been uneven on the battlefield as of late, Lu Guangbai observed. Xiaoqia had been the one to personally kill Achi, the leader of the Scorpions, in Duanzhou. Hasen had assumed that, after returning to the front lines, Xiaoqia would lead his new armored cavalry out of the camps and onto the battlefield. Instead, Xiaoqia had stayed well out of reach. Hasen had been given no opportunity to come face-to-face with Li Bei's newly equipped forces. It was as if they had swapped places. An unknown danger was one that couldn't be forestalled or countered. As long as the capabilities of Chao Chia's new cavalry remained a mystery, Ha Sen couldn't call the shots. The battles Ha Sen fought on both the northern and southern battlefields were all ones he was sure he could win. Chao Chia absently turned his thumb ring. And his victories are owed in part to his familiarity with our commanding generals. The exhilarating battle Qi Juyin had fought at First Sand Camp was proof of the strategic value of unpredictability. Xiao Jiming had seen this, which was why he had shuffled the commanding generals on the front line. Only when Ha Sen met with the Libei armored cavalry again did he realize what Xiao Jiming had done. Xiao Jiming was the kind of commander-in-chief Ha Sen disliked most. Even when he couldn't keep up with the enemy's pace, he never got flustered. He always seemed to maintain his composure. This was both Xiao Jiming's character and his style of conducting war. He understood he couldn't beat Ha Sen head-to-head, so he never thought of besting Ha Sen on the battlefield himself. Instead, he had spent the last few months slowing Li Bei's rhythm. The armored cavalry was in the process of recovery. Even if they couldn't win every skirmish, they wouldn't let Ha Sen lead them around by the nose as they had before. Even Ha Sen is bound to get impatient when he's so close to his goal, Chao Chia said thoughtfully. After all, he's so anxious for victory. Xiao Jiming wanted to give this opportunity to Xiao Chia. Lu Guangbai looked at Xiao Chia. Amor has invested all of his efforts into Ha Sen. The outcome of his son's battles is a matter of Amor's dignity in the face of the other tribes. If Ha Sen can't win, then Amor cannot become the future great king of the 12 tribes. Xiao Chia didn't care why Ha Sen wanted to win. He only cared to claim Ha Sen's head. Lu Guangbai seemed to understand this, so he didn't belabor his point. Instead, he said, "Another source of Ha Sen's apprehension is the south. Now that Marshal Qi is fighting the Qingshu tribe, they're facing pressure from both directions." But was Ha Sen genuinely anxious over the northern and southern battlefields? Xiao Chia felt that there was more to Ha Sen's recent onslaughts, that perhaps they were a diversion to disguise his real target. Instead of fighting wars of attrition on two fronts, dragging things out indefinitely, the most strategic place to attack was Zhongbo. Ha Sen was good at feints. There's the word, finally, in this chapter. Xiao Chia kept his eyes fixed on every move his enemy made. His understanding of Ha Sen had already far exceeded Ha Sen's understanding of him. He stalked him now, like a wolf in the dark. Haha. It's our wolf. It's our wolf boy. Yeah, I think I personally was feeling weird about Xiao Jiming, but I think now he really was like trying to line up an opportunity for Xiao Chia, and he really is like there for his success. I mean, there could still be a twist that he's not. But to me, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm lessening a little bit on my suspicion of him. Maybe that's what she wants us to do. I don't know. But that's how I feel right now. So that's the end of the chapter. The end of what we read for our stream today. When we come back on Monday, we will be on chapter 232, which is called Snowmelt Flood. I'm not sure how I feel about that chapter title either. Why are we always flooding? Exactly. There's all kinds of floods happening here. We got all kinds of flooding in this book. Yes, Henry, Sean is a wolf and brother Awu. Hopefully not more issues with the public ditches. Yeah. Oh goodness, I can't even process anything anymore after all of those chapters. This book, I get it. We're in book 7 out of 8, so we're really packing it in. Stuff is happening, at a breakneck pace, and I'm like, I'm not prepared, and everything feels ominous, and I'm just like, help. Ugh. All the public ditches. There are too many public ditches. There's like, oh god. At least Shenzachuan won't be swimming through the filth if it happens again. I sure hope not. I sure hope nothing places him in a situation that he has to do that for some reason. Okay. I'm gonna go. Thank you so much for coming to the stream. I will see y'all on Monday. Have a good rest of your week. Bye.